American restoration.
Me and Tyler are on our way to the Clark County Museum to see about restoring a piece of Nevada history.
One moment changed everything. What looked like a successful TV show built on passion, nostalgia, and restoration was suddenly thrown off course. For years, fans believed American restoration ended quietly. But behind the scenes, there was more to the story. Was it really a tragic accident that brought the show to a halt? Or has the truth been buried under years of speculation? This is the story of how it all unraveled, and why American restoration never came back. Rick Dale's roots in restoration. Before the cameras, before the fame, and long before American restoration became a household name, Rick Dale was already living the very essence of the show. His story didn't begin in a studio. It began in the dusty corners of Las Vegas, where history had a habit of hiding in plain sight. In a city known for reinvention, Rick developed a rare instinct for holding on to the past. Growing up in the 1970s, Rick was a kid with vision. Where others saw junk, he saw possibility. While most children were drawn to new gadgets and plastic toys, Rick was far more intrigued by the aging slot machines, rusted signage, and abandoned appliances scattered around his neighborhood. He would wander through junkyards like they were museums, pulling back the curtain on forgotten eras, one object at a time. Instead of running on playgrounds, he spent countless hours in his family's garage, taking apart old radios, clocks, and mechanical oddities, not to break them, but to understand them. The way gears meshed, the way time ticked forward through careful engineering, it fascinated him. He wasn't just playing, he was learning the language of craftsmanship, a language most kids his age didn't even know existed. Rick's curiosity matured into something much more profound, a respect for the way things used to be made. Each object he handled told a story, whether it came from a neon-lit diner or a service station on Route 66. He saw the fingerprints of time, the wear and tear of memory, and he wanted to preserve them. By his early 20s, Rick had quietly earned a reputation in the local collector circles. He was the guy who could take an old bicycle or a rusted-out gas pump and turn it into something you'd proudly display. He worked with precision, not flair, letting the piece tell him how it wanted to come back to life. But passion alone wouldn't pay the bills. Rick knew that if he wanted to make restoration more than a side hustle, he had to take risks. And soon, he would. That leap of faith would set the foundation for Rick's Restorations, the shop that would eventually land him on national television and change everything. And if you're finding this journey as fascinating as the finished restorations themselves, go ahead and share. We're just getting started. The rise of Rick's Restorations. At the heart of every successful business is someone who refused to give up when it would have been easier to walk away. For Rick Dale, that moment came when he turned his passion for restoration into a full-fledged operation. Rick's Restorations, right in the middle of Las Vegas, a city more focused on the future than the past. But Rick wasn't looking to keep up with trends. He was determined to bring history back to life. In the late 1980s, Rick made a bold move. He had spent years refining his skills, but now it was time to test whether that passion could survive in the real world of business. He wasn't handed investors or easy money. Banks saw antique restoration as a gamble, and most people didn't understand why someone would pour time into fixing what they considered junk. But Rick believed each piece told a story worth saving, and he was all in. Starting out wasn't glamorous. The first workshop was modest, the kind of place you could drive past without noticing. But inside, something special was happening. Rick tackled every job with intensity and care. Whether it was a rusted-out gas pump, a battered Coca-Cola cooler, or a forgotten diner jukebox. He didn't just fix things, he returned them to their former glory, respecting every detail and honoring the design choices of the past. Slowly, the word spread. Local collectors began to notice. Dealers, too. People who had nearly tossed their family heirlooms started thinking twice, and they brought them to Rick. His work spoke for itself. Not only were the restorations visually stunning, but they felt authentic. His clients appreciated that he wasn't polishing up old items just to make them look new. He was reviving their soul. By the time the early 2000s rolled around, Rick's restorations had grown from a one-man hustle into a trusted name. His shop was a hive of constant motion, filled with the clatter of tools and the hum of machines coming back to life. It had become more than a business. It was a shrine to American craftsmanship. Still, Rick had no idea bigger changes were coming. The History Channel had been watching quietly from the sidelines, and what they saw convinced them that Rick's shop deserved a national audience. The birth of American restoration. What started as a small workshop in Las Vegas suddenly became the backdrop for one of cable TV's most unexpectedly popular reality shows. The turning point came not through strategy or ambition, but through Rick Dale's undeniable talent, catching the right eyes at the right time. By the late 2000s, Rick's meticulous work at Rick's Restorations had already built him a solid reputation among collectors and antique lovers. But it was his occasional appearances on Pawn Stars, restoring gas pumps and other Americana for the gold and silver pawn shop, that introduced him to a national audience. He was preserving pieces of American history with precision, care, and personality. That rare combination caught the attention of producers at the History Channel. They saw more than a side character. They saw a show. At first, Rick wasn't sold on the idea. He wasn't chasing fame, and he didn't see how a show about restoring old machines could keep people watching week after week. His work was about details, not drama. But producers were persistent. They pitched a series that would highlight the craftsmanship, tell the stories behind the antiques, and capture the nostalgia these items stirred in people. Eventually, Rick agreed, and with that, American Restoration was born. The show debuted in October 2010, and it struck a nerve. Each episode gave viewers an inside look at Rick's process, from the first, rusted glance at a new project to the final, gleaming reveal. The work itself was fascinating, but what pulled people in was the way Rick approached each item, with reverence, excitement, and a deep understanding of its past. Unlike most reality shows at the time, American Restoration didn't need gimmicks. There were no shouting matches or fake tension. It was real people doing skilled work, solving problems in the shop, and bringing history back to life. Rick's steady presence and storytelling made the complex feel simple, and viewers couldn't get enough. The audience grew quickly. Millions tuned in each week to watch old Coca-Cola machines, bicycles, neon signs, and more get a second chance. But the magic didn't just come from Rick alone. It came from the crew around him, the team whose chemistry gave the shop its energy and heart. And while the spotlight had finally found Rick, it was about to shine even brighter on the people standing beside him. If you're enjoying the ride so far, don't forget to like, because what happens next inside that shop might just surprise you. The heart of the show, Rick's team. American Restoration became a hit and was miles apart from every other show that looked like it on national TV. This was the reality of the show, thanks to the craftsmanship and chemistry of the team. Rick Dale may have been the face of the operation, but it was the dynamic, sometimes chaotic, always entertaining team behind him that gave the show its pulse. Their personalities, quirks, and undeniable bond transformed Rick's restorations from a workplace into a living, breathing character in its own right. At the center of that team was Rick's younger brother, Ron Dale, whose knack for mechanical problem-solving was rivaled only by his sense of humor. Whether he was diagnosing a stubborn engine or pulling a prank on a coworker, Ron balanced technical skill with comic relief. He kept things light, even during the most frustrating projects, but always delivered when precision was required. Viewers came to expect Ron's jokes as much as they did his mechanical know-how. Holding the business side together was Rick's wife, Kelly Mayer. Sharp, assertive, and deeply organized, she ran the front office with a steady hand, managing clients, budgets, and deadlines while wrangling a team of eccentric personalities. Kelly was the glue that kept the operation on track. Her presence grounded the shop, and her back and forth with Rick, part loving partnership, part eye-rolling exasperation, added an authentic, relatable dynamic to the show. Meanwhile, their son, Tyler Dale, stepped into the workshop as an eager apprentice. Teenaged and wide-eyed, Tyler brought energy, curiosity, and the occasional headache. He wasn't just learning how to restore vintage machines, he was figuring out how to find his place in a team of seasoned pros. Viewers watched as he matured on screen, moving from rookie mistakes to reliable results, earning not just his father's respect, but the audience's affection. Then there were the shop's beloved wild cards. Cowboy, the rugged metal fabricator, could shape raw steel like it was clay, hiding artistry beneath his gruff exterior. And Bretley, the assistant with a big heart and 2 left feet, often found himself the source of comic relief, dropping tools, misreading instructions, but never lacking in effort or loyalty. Together, this crew became more than just co-workers. They were a family, bickering, laughing, and hustling side by side. Their companionship made the workshop feel familiar, even to viewers watching from thousands of miles away. But as the show's fame grew, so did the pressures behind the scenes. And the very closeness that made the series work would soon be tested in ways no one saw coming. The craftsmanship that captivated millions. What truly kept audiences coming back to American Restoration wasn't just the characters. It was the thrill of watching forgotten, time-worn relics reborn before their eyes. Every transformation felt like a small miracle. Whether it was a rusted-out Coke machine or a barely recognizable 1940s gas pump, viewers tuned in week after week to witness the extraordinary craftsmanship that turned junkyard wrecks into showpieces of American history. Behind every polished chrome finish and restored paint job was a painstaking process that blended artistry, engineering, and an almost obsessive attention to detail. Rick Dale and his team treated each object with the kind of reverence usually reserved for museum curators. Their approach started with a full inspection, stripping the item down to its bare bones to assess damage and uncover hidden stories buried beneath decades of wear. Disassembly was as strategic as it was surgical. Bolts were cataloged, wiring diagrams were sketched, and every dent or crack became a puzzle to solve. Some parts could be salvaged. Others had to be recreated using custom molds, fabrication tools, or even hand-forging methods that hadn't changed much in half a century. Rick's insistence on authenticity pushed the team to source era-accurate parts and finishes, even if it meant scouring junkyards or calling in favors from across the country. It wasn't just about fixing something, It was about honoring the period it came from. When a 1950s diner sign was restored, it didn't just light up again. It radiated the style, color, and energy of a long-gone era. When a childhood bicycle was rebuilt, it didn't just ride like new. It carried a lifetime of memories back into someone's hands. This mix of technical excellence and emotional storytelling gave the show its soul. Viewers weren't just watching mechanics at work, they were witnessing the preservation of American culture. The show explained every step in a way that made it accessible to the average person, helping audiences understand not just how things were restored, but why it mattered. Ratings from 2010 to 2012 reflected this connection, with nearly 3 million viewers tuning in weekly, drawn not just by nostalgia, but by the craftsmanship itself. Yet, as the projects grew more ambitious and the stories more personal, the stakes began to rise. What started as a passion for restoration was slowly evolving into something more complex and far more demanding. Emotional stories behind the restorations. What made American restoration truly unforgettable wasn't just the gleaming restorations. It was the memories welded into each object, and the stories that quietly came with them. Behind every rusted relic was someone hoping to reconnect with the past. And Rick Dale's shop became a place where emotion and craftsmanship met in the most powerful ways. These weren't just repairs. They were tributes to people, moments, and memories long gone. Each item that arrived at the shop carried a story, sometimes joyful, sometimes heartbreaking, but always personal. For the clients, these weren't antiques pulled from flea markets. They were lifelines to lost parents, childhood homes, or moments they couldn't let go of. In one episode, a returning customer, Big Mike, brings in a 1960 Schwinn bicycle as a 60th birthday surprise for his business partner, battered and nearly unrecognizable. It wasn't just a bike. Restoring it wasn't about paint or polish. It was about honoring a man's quiet resilience. When Rick's team unveiled the finished piece, gleaming and fully functional, the emotion in the room said more than words ever could. In another episode, a client returned with a 1950s jukebox that once lit up her parents' small-town diner. As a child, she had danced barefoot across those linoleum floors, soundtracked by Elvis and Chuck Berry. Now, decades later, she just wanted to hear it play again. The team's meticulous work, reviving the worn wood, replacing damaged mechanisms, and restoring the original neon glow, brought not only the machine back to life, but the memories that had faded with it. These were the moments that resonated far beyond the screen. Viewers weren't just watching vintage items get restored. They were watching people reconnect with a piece of their identity. It's what made the show feel so deeply personal, even to those who'd never stepped foot inside a restoration shop. Fan feedback from 2010 to 2013 routinely praised these stories, calling them the heart of the series, the part that turned viewers into loyal followers. By merging technical precision with emotional storytelling, American Restoration built a connection with its audience that most reality shows only dream of. But as the series soared in popularity, success came with its own set of complications, pressures that would soon test everything the team had built. The peak of American Restoration. At its height, American Restoration didn't just entertain, it inspired a movement. The show had tapped into something deeper than nostalgia. It reignited national interest in craftsmanship, storytelling, and the beauty of breathing new life into old things. During its prime, the series wasn't just a top performer for the History Channel, It became a cultural touchstone. People weren't just watching restorations, they were feeling something personal every time Rick Dale and his team brought an heirloom back to life. By 2012, the numbers spoke volumes. Weekly episodes consistently pulled in around 2.9 million viewers, with one breakout episode drawing an incredible 6.5 million. But the buzz extended far beyond the screen. Viewers weren't just fans, they were participants. Antique shops across the country started seeing a spike in curious hobbyists asking questions, seeking guidance, and showing up with their rusted keepsakes. Restoration workshops saw a noticeable surge in interest, something industry reports from the time picked up on. Rick's Restorations became a tourist destination in its own right. Located in Las Vegas, the shop transformed into a pilgrimage site for fans who wanted to catch a glimpse of the crew, or even just walk the same floor where transformations happened. The team, once a tight group of hands-on craftsmen, suddenly found themselves in the public eye, signing autographs, appearing at conventions, and sharing stories with thousands of admirers. Fan letters, many of which were later shared on forums and fan-run archives, often praised the show's sincerity. People wrote about how the show reminded them of time spent with grandparents, of objects they once took for granted, and of the craftsmanship that had quietly faded in an increasingly disposable world. Rick Dale's mission, to preserve history through restoration, had clearly resonated. The show struck a balance few others managed. It was informative without being dry, emotional without being staged, and visually satisfying in every reveal. At that moment, it felt unstoppable. But success on that scale often comes with a cost. As the cameras kept rolling and expectations kept rising, the weight of being both craftsman and TV star began to shift the energy behind the scenes. Tensions, creative differences, and the grind of reality production were all quietly gathering, ready to challenge everything the team had built. Mounting pressures and creative clashes. What started as a celebration of craftsmanship was slowly being reshaped by the very machine that made it famous. As American restoration reached its peak, the demands of television began to collide head-on with the values that had once defined Rick Dale's workshop. The fame brought opportunity, but it also brought strain, both creative and personal, that quietly chipped away at the heart of the show. Filming had once been a natural extension of the team's work. Now, it dictated everything. Tight production schedules replaced the rhythm of hands-on craftsmanship with the tick of looming deadlines. Restorations that once took weeks were crammed into days, not because it made sense for the craft, but because the cameras needed content. The pressure to deliver on cue drained the energy that once made Rick's Restorations such a lively, authentic space. Staff who used to laugh while sanding metal now found themselves repeating takes and dodging camera crews while trying to focus on delicate work. But the deeper conflict wasn't just about time, it was about vision. Rick had always been clear about his purpose: to restore historical objects with care, accuracy, and respect. Every gas pump, jukebox, and neon sign that came through the shop told a story, and Rick believed the show's job was to honor that. The producers, however, saw things differently. As ratings became the top priority, they began leaning harder on artificial drama. They pushed for faster turnarounds, spiced up storylines, and even considered staging disagreements to keep viewers hooked. That direction didn't sit well with Rick. He resisted efforts to cut corners, particularly when asked to substitute modern materials for period-accurate parts. It wasn't just a professional disagreement. It felt like a betrayal of the show's original mission. Heated arguments followed, and those once small rifts between Rick and the production team began to widen. Verified interviews from former staff during the 2013 to 2014 seasons confirm what fans had started to suspect. Things behind the scenes weren't as smooth as they appeared on screen. What had begun as a tight-knit operation now felt fractured. The family atmosphere that viewers had come to love started to fade under the weight of creative clashes and non-stop production demands. And as Rick found himself increasingly at odds with the direction of the show, it became clear that a major turning point was near, one that would soon shake American restoration to its core. If you've been enjoying this deep dive into the untold story behind the show, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. There's more behind-the-scenes truth coming your way. The tragic shakeup that changed everything. The heart of American restoration stopped beating the day Rick Dale was removed from the show. After 6 seasons of building a loyal fan base and turning rust into gold, History Channel executives made a decision in 2014 that stunned viewers and shook the foundation of the series. Without warning, Rick, his family, and the entire original crew were dropped. In their place, the network introduced a new format, with 5 different shops scattered across the country, each with its own specialty, but none carrying the soul that had made the show a hit. This overhaul wasn't the result of one dramatic incident. It was the final chapter in a slow-building conflict between Rick and the producers. Frustrated by creative clashes and mounting pressure to prioritize ratings over integrity, Rick had grown increasingly vocal behind the scenes. The network, meanwhile, wanted to reinvigorate the show by broadening its scope. In theory, rotating shops and diverse projects would bring fresh energy. In practice, it stripped the series of its identity. Season 7 debuted with Bawdy Stroud Industries in Los Angeles restoring classic cars, Wheels Through Time in North Carolina reviving vintage motorcycles, Bob's Garage in Detroit focusing on neon signs, Steve's Restorations in New York building custom vehicles, and Monkey Business in Las Vegas handling offbeat antiques. Each shop had talent, no doubt, but they were strangers to longtime viewers. The emotional core that Rick's restorations provided, that sense of a close-knit family breathing life into meaningful heirlooms, was nowhere to be found. For fans who had followed Rick from day one, the shift felt personal. The chemistry between Rick, his wife Kelly, his son Tyler, and the rest of the crew, Ron, Cowboy, Brettley, was what gave the show heart. They weren't just co-workers on screen, they were a real team with a shared purpose. Their exit left a hole that the new format couldn't fill. Online forums and fan sites lit up with questions, frustration, and speculation. But Rick stayed mostly silent. In rare interviews, he hinted at disagreements with producers but chose not to dwell on the details. What was intended as a bold reinvention quickly became a cautionary tale. Stripped of its familiar faces and emotional grounding, American restoration entered unfamiliar territory. The gamble didn't pay off, and the consequences would soon become impossible to ignore. No Rick, no show. The collapse of American restoration's final chapter. Few television decisions have triggered as fierce a backlash as the one that removed Rick Dale from American restoration. When Season 7 aired in January 2016, without him or his crew, longtime viewers were not just disappointed, they were livid. What was once a tightly knit, emotionally driven show had been replaced with a rotating lineup of unfamiliar shops and faces. The change felt jarring. Fans had tuned in week after week, not just for the restorations, but for the people behind them. With Rick's restorations gone, many felt the show had lost its soul. Viewers didn't hold back. The backlash exploded on social media. Archived posts from early 2016 on social media show fans venting their frustration in droves. Many fans echoed the same sentiment that the show without Rick wasn't worth watching. And the numbers backed it up. Ratings for the new season dropped significantly, falling far below the show's heyday when episodes pulled in nearly 3 million viewers each week. Despite the producers' hopes of attracting a broader audience, the gamble had failed. Reports from 2016 indicated that the show never regained its footing. The loss of Rick's presence had created a void that no format change could fix. The new cast carried on, but the shadow of what came before loomed large. Without the foundation built by Rick and his team, American Restoration struggled to justify its name, both in content and in spirit. The writing was already on the wall. What ultimately doomed American Restoration wasn't a lack of talent, it was the absence of connection. When the new cast took over in Season 7, the 5 featured shops had the credentials, the tools, and the technical expertise to impress any restoration enthusiast. Body Stroud Industries delivered sleek custom cars. Wheels Through Time revived rare vintage motorcycles. Bob's Garage, Monkey Business, and Steve's Restorations each brought unique specialties to the table. But what they didn't bring, and couldn't replicate, was the heart and emotional thread that had once tied the series together. Stepping into a show already loved by millions, the new cast inherited a massive challenge. They weren't just expected to perform difficult restorations, they had to do it on camera, under pressure, and on tight timelines. Just like Rick Dale's team before them, they quickly felt the strain of production demands. Behind the scenes, filming was rigid and fast-paced, leaving little room for the kind of deep, deliberate craftsmanship that restoration work truly demands. Working under that kind of pressure wore down the same creative spark the show once celebrated. The producers, hoping to maintain viewer interest, leaned further into manufactured drama and scripted tension. While this tactic had already drawn criticism during Rick's final seasons, it clashed even more starkly with the new cast's work. These were professionals, not actors, and when the cameras encouraged over-the-top scenarios, the results often felt flat or forced. Viewers picked up on it immediately. Where Rick's restorations had offered an ongoing story filled with recurring faces, shop banter, and family dynamics, the new format jumped from location to location, giving viewers little chance to form a bond with any single cast. The result was a fragmented viewing experience, technically impressive, but emotionally hollow. No matter how many engines were rebuilt or signs restored, the new format couldn't recreate the heart that once made American Restoration more than just a show. It was now just another series trying and failing to hold on. How it all ended, and what Rick left behind. The story of American Restoration didn't end with a grand finale. It faded out quietly, without the fanfare it once deserved. By mid-2016, the show's decline was too steep to ignore. Viewership had dropped dramatically, and the revamped format from Season 7 had failed to revive interest. Behind the scenes, the History Channel made its decision. American Restoration was cancelled. There was no big announcement, no tribute to its earlier success, just a quiet removal from the lineup, confirmed by network records later that year. It was a quiet ending to what had once been a cultural phenomenon. At its height, American Restoration drew millions each week, anchored by the authentic energy of Rick Dale and his Las Vegas-based team. Their hands-on work, unpolished banter, and clear love for the craft gave the show a rare sincerity that set it apart from typical reality fare. But when that dynamic was removed, so was the show's heartbeat. Fans never fully embraced the new version, and without that connection, the series simply couldn't hold on. Rick Dale, however, didn't disappear when the cameras stopped rolling. He returned full-time to his workshop, Rick's Restorations, picking up right where he left off. In a 2016 video that circulated widely among his fan base, Rick opened up about the show's end, acknowledging the toll it took, but also expressing deep pride in what his team had accomplished. Unlike many reality TV personalities, Rick didn't chase more screen time. He went back to what made him famous in the first place, restoring history, one piece at a time. Nearly a decade later, Rick's Restorations is still a working shop, still drawing visitors from around the world. For fans, stepping inside is like walking into the show itself. Same tools, same faces, same passion. That's the real legacy. The show may be gone, but its influence lives on through the people it inspired. Between 2011 and 2016, trade publications noted a sharp rise in hobbyist restorers and small shops opening up, many citing American restoration as their spark. The show may have ended, but the impact continues in garages, basements, and workshops everywhere. And that's a legacy no cancellation can erase. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.